And joining us in studio, Lakite Gisho, human rights lawyer, and we have Alfred Chabalala, Right to Know campaign activist, and Javu Baloyi, Commissioner for Gender Equality. And as always, the lines are open 011-542-2186. On Twitter, it's at ANET7TV, or my personal one at I am Cindy Mabi. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. I mean, we would have thought that the whole Oscar Pistorius and Reva Steenkamp saga and the trial being completed, that would be the end of it. But the allure of creating a blockbuster and reliving that pain is something that we have to balance as society, because there are families who are still heavily affected. I'll start with you, Mr. Baloyi. In your view, as to what creatives may sometimes not consider, especially the impact that this would have on the families.
Thank you for having us. You know, we understand that there's a freedom of expression and creativity as from the Commission for Gender Equality. However, nothing is absolute. We feel as a excuse me, excuse me,
yeah,
as a commission, okay. It's okay. We feel as a commission that it was rather too soon, that we have it in good authority that the family, through the lawyers, hasn't been conducted. And this movie on its own is also hero-shipping Oscar as a hero of some sort. And that can be in the society where violence is rampant every day, violence is endemic, where violence is being normalized by society. So what message that is sending this movie out there? Our stance as a Commission for Gender Equality is that this has to be caned, and due consideration has to be taken for the families, and not only for the families, for the South Africans who witnessed the brutality and the people who have before the courts before this case. And you'll remember that the Commission for Gender Equality is also against the sentencing that was given to Oscar Pistorius. So on its own, it's invoking those bad memories that we witnessed in 2013 when Oscar killed Reva Steenkamp.
But I mean, how do you then control it? Because there could be a verbal agreement with somebody purporting to be a representative of the family. In this case, June Steenkamp completely denying that there had been any consultation, and yet the film had gone into production. In fact, it even premieres on the 11th of November. Groundwork was done, investments were made, locations sorted. In that process, no consultation happened. Is there a likelihood that maybe somebody who had the power of attorney could have given the rights for this film to be produced?
I doubt that has happened, because both families alleged not to have known anything about this film. And we have what we would call the entertainment law that really talks about the depiction of life. Agreement, and if they could have had that, perhaps we would have spoken something else. But what is critical to that is that if you are to deal with a life story of a person, that person does have what they call a life story right. And when you deal with a life story right, it means you have to consult this person. The person has to consent, and the person needs to understand the story before you can even talk about any story, because he needs to be able to narrate it the manner in which he understands, because you're talking about the life story of a person, not a fiction. So that person must be satisfied to say, yes, I agree with what you are going to show the viewers. And if that is not the case, I think they do have a right to go to court and be able to cane this thing and interdict it.
Yeah, but how does it even get this far if you're saying that we are governed by the preamble of the law, the right of people to be consulted, at least, giving consent, albeit that it is a prominent public figure, and the rationale could be that people want to have a view or different perspective of what happened. In your view, right to know, do we really have the right to know in this case?
Yeah, I think it's very critical to take note of that. Firstly, we're in a very critical society. Our society is not necessarily a human rights-based society. People are making money out of other people's sadness. This is what we are always fighting against. So this is not completely out of what is happening. People are taking advantage of others. This is seen as a business by those who want to make money. It's a very sad one, but this society must look at itself and say, this is where we are, because this is exactly what is happening. The rights that people have in terms of being considered and all those things, are overtaken by the rights of those who make a lot of success out of it. So the laws and everything in this country are just taken advantage of on daily basis.
Yeah,
this is what is happening.
Let's invite to Advocate Memani Nomazojo Memani, advocate and ANC Women's League member. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. Just your reaction on hearing about this movie. I think most of us were taken by surprise, and worst of all, the families concerned not being consulted.
Yes. Good evening, Sandy. Yes, it's really shocking to find that the Pistorius family has considered to such a thing without even consulting the Rivers family. First of all, as the previous speaker has spoken, I'm not going to deal with the law at this point in time, but the fact of the matter, you can't do a live story about somebody and then without that person's consent. And as the ANC Women's League, we find that, as a violation of the human dignity of this other particular family, and the undermining of that particular, the Steenkamp family. And out of all the pain that the family has endured because of this particular man called Oscar, and now they are making money, somebody is making money out of it, and of course, I will assume that the Pistorius family is going to get royalties. And what about the River Steenkamp family? What about the Steenkamp family? This is really unfair of what this person is doing. And it goes back to gender-based violence. It shows that men, they oppress women, even oppress the dead human beings like River. We find it as very ridiculous, and we find it as undermining. I'm not sure whether you've got a Steenkamp family on the panel or not, but this is the view of the ANC Women's League that I'm putting.
Advocate Memani, please stay on the line. We have our first caller, Lindsay, in Port Elizabeth. Good evening to you, and thanks for joining us. What's your comment or question?
Hi, Cindy. Listen here. Well, he obviously does have the mind of a killer. He killed Reva, and whether the courts found him innocent or not guilty of killing her, we all know what happened. And, I feel very sorry for the Steenkamp family. If there's anybody to sue over the film rights, I think the money should go to the Steenkamps, most certainly not the Pistorius family. As far as I'm concerned, Oscar Pistorius can bend down and walk on his little stumps for the rest of his life. He killed her, and he did it on purpose. And until he admits that, he will never, ever have peace. Thanks, Cindy.
Lindsay, thanks so much calling us from Port Elizabeth. And I think it's that level of, how do you put it, to being desensitized as communities, and how even on either side, where we're very quick to take a position on the guilt and condemnation, in this case Oscar, forgetting that he himself has got family members who are struggling to deal with what has befallen him. But going back again to whether South Africa have got the necessary protection of not only celebrities or leaders, or is it just the developed industries taking advantage and hoping that they can get away with it?
It is. It is some people treating us with disdain and impunity in South Africa, that they can make movies about South Africans and the state of things here, and forgetting that, these things have got serious undertones. The anecdotes and nuances that, have to be considered beforehand. For them, it's about making money. Money at the expense of South Africans, who do not want to relive the memories of River being killed in such a brutal manner. So for them, it's about making money, making the movies for the Emmys and the Oscars, and forgetting that their lives here, including the Pistorius families, including the Rivers family, more so to River, because, oftentimes we talk about Oscar and we forget there was a girl, a beautiful, young, talented girl called River, who died so brutally at the hands of a man. So that, and femicide is a problem in South Africa, intimate partner killing. So those are some of the things that, Cindy, we need to be considerate when doing things that, we do not have to allow these big companies, corporates coming to South Africa and do as they wish. And our government should put it down and clamp it down. I just wish maybe through the international relations and other people to say, this has to be canned. It cannot be allowed to continue.
Yeah, because I mean, where the Steenkamp family, you know, in court submission saying that they're dependent or on Reva, she would be very supportive of them financially. So now to take on a litigation against an established Hollywood production house would cost them quite dearly. But let's take another caller, Brian in Katlehong. Good evening to you, and Jabu, we see you as well. Hello, Brian.
Good evening, Cindy. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Okay. Cindy, I want to agree with one of your panelists. This is a clear indication of white monopoly capital. And now they are using one of theirs, River Steenkamp and Pistorius. You understand? That is an indication that South Africa, they'll do everything to take the resources or natural resources of South Africa. Now they are taking the talents and even taking the stories that happen in South Africa to make a movie, which is wrong. You understand? I believe that the family of Steenkamp, they must take this thing and make a case, a serious case when I said it. It's a serious case, myself.
All right. No, we really appreciate your call. Just our next caller as a Jabu.
Yes, my name is Jabu.
Hi, Jabu. Kunjan.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
I'm concerned into the Yenzagala, movie Yenzagele and Oscar Pistorius and yes, Mama, before by the film movie, they're supposed to consult proof. I need by the into banga consultant and then could buy Vumel into the Yenzagala or not. Because into the I see Vumela nayo into the past, into Lulile. So Lento Benzile is totally wrong. Mina I blame my families if they can take a legal action for Bona or not. But into the peace. The scale about into the movie cancel at all.
All right, Jabu. Siyabonga saying we must boycott the movie. It's in bad faith and bad taste, for that matter. This is a closed case, in his words. Felix in Mbombela, good evening to you.
Good evening. Thank you, Cindy, for taking my call.
Welcome.
I think we must understand that anybody has the freedom to make up the movie to court. Oscar Pistorius and his family can take them to court. River Steenkamp can take them to court. But what we cannot do is to take away the right to make a movie based on a true life story. Now, when they make their movie based on this story, to dip into the mind of a killer, whatever you want to take about it is fine, but we need to see the movie. We need to begin to understand the mind of a killer, because there are just too many killers among us. There are just too many killers that have not been, we don't understand their mind. So the maker of the movie is trying to show us the mind of a killer. Whether Oscar Pistorius did it intentionally or not is irrelevant. They can go to court and challenge it, but we have to understand the mind of a killer.
Yeah, Felix, thanks so much, and I'll pose that to Mr. Shabalala in the sense that information that's already been in the public domain. We've seen the live recordings of the trial, ourselves even becoming some legal gurus of sorts, going through the paces. There's been a book on the story itself. Can the movie makers then say, well, it's not anything new, we'll just structure it in such a way that we give it a different angle, a little bit more entertainment edge? Can it go that far?
Well, that is very unfortunate, because, in terms of having the rights, everybody has got that. The thing that we all are saying is that how it happened this time around, the law would not necessarily act against you when you are exercising it. Sometimes you have to get to the different angles of these rights. They have a right as people who are doing business to come to those kind of situations. We don't agree with it. We're saying it's a wrong way because they were very not sympathetic. They should have been responsible. I think that is what everybody is saying. But then you cannot say to them they cannot publish because they've already have sources. The court itself was so open up, the media was there, and it is a public thing. So anybody could have taken interpretation. Even at academic level, you find that somebody has written a thesis about it. So those kind of things, they are made. But so far, there's a sensitivity that should have applied. Yeah. But we don't take this fundamental right from them.
Okay, but so that the public interest, again, and how we've all been exposed to the nitty-gritties and the details of the trial, what does the law say in whether somebody reproduces a particular narrative or story for entertainment value?
You see, maybe let me try and give impact to the issue of celebrities, whether they have rights or not. They do have rights. Right of privacy, right of your life as a person. Those are rights that you have as a celebrity. You know, it doesn't mean that if you're a celebrity, somebody can just come and say whatever he wants without you being able to rebut that. But now, what is critical here is that you ought to ensure that when you utilize your rights in the public interest, you must also respect the right of a life story. Because if you talk about fiction, you would understand. Fiction is fiction. You know, you don't need anyone's permission because it's your own innovative mind. But when we are going to say you talk about a life story of a person, you depict that. There is no way that you can do that and claim public interest. You have to consult that person, because the danger here is that you might misrepresent the main issues that happened in that particular life story. And it's only fair for that person to be able to contribute and correct you here and there to give the true life story of a person. But you cannot say you can be able on your own without consulting with a person, give a true life story of a person on the basis of what you have seen. And say, yes, this is a true life story of a person.
Mr. Malu, I come back to you with Carl Pistorius saying that his brother doesn't have the mind of a killer, as the court and psychological evaluation had proven, a month-long intense sessions that he's undergone to prove that he does not have the mind of a killer. You should see the reaction on Twitter saying, you know, get over yourself, indeed he's a killer. That's why he was found guilty in the first place. So in that, even on social media, if the family is being maligned, lambasted, and all sorts of things, where does the law then come in if we're saying that no other material may be produced without their consent? And yet we have the social media realm where people pretty much can say what they want. I'll come back to you for your response. Solin Gauteng, good evening to you.
Good evening, Sylvie.
Hi. I've been called worse. Carry on.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I was watching the show and I just thought to myself, I have a few points that I wanted to bring out. For me, I stand for Lifetime and the show that they are producing, because if you watch what's happening in America, and if you watch South Africans, the world always are trying to be Americans. So if you watch what's happening in America, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, within 2 to 3 years of their deaths, there was already movies out about them. So this is a relevant topic in our country, and we need to start dealing with relevant topics in our country. Yes, I get apartheid was maniacal, it was horrible, but we now need to start talking about exactly what's happening in our country, the corruption, the killings, and if Oscar, well, he didn't get away with it, so so that's what I'm saying. But also, the research from Lifetime should have been done a lot better. But the fact is, they're not trying to create documentary series. They are creating puff pieces. They are creating content that is making people want to watch. Because when I saw the promo last night for the first time for the 11th of November, I was like, I'm going to watch this because I'm interested. It's something that grabs me. It's something that's relevant to my life that's happening right now, because it happened on the 14th of February and all that other stuff was happening on that day. What I don't agree with the most is the title of the Blade Runner Killer. Because I feel like when they did Whitney Houston, they didn't say Whitney Houston, the drug addict. They didn't say Michael Jackson, the plastic surgery.
Pedophile, yeah.
So I don't agree with the title, but other than that, I feel like it's very relevant, and it's where we need to start moving, because I'm a producer myself, a TV producer. We need to start moving our culture to creating TV and not looking to American TV to create culture for us.
All right, so let's put it to our panelists. Yeah, we're out of time. Thanks indeed for your contribution. We'll put it to our panelists in a bit. Roger, good evening to you, and Turkey in PE. Hi, Roger.
Good evening, Cindy. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
No, not too bad. Cindy, I just want to do one thing first. Number one, I'd like to send my condolences to the Steenkamp family. Number two, this is a tragic thing that happened. Absolute tragedy for South Africa. Secondly, as far as the legal point of view goes, this case was put on the media, broadcasted worldwide. And broadcasted worldwide, it then becomes public knowledge. So therefore, the stuff is sitting in public space. So my opinion is then it can be used.
Okay, Roger, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks indeed. Hi, Turkey. You're our last call on this. Good evening to you. Hi, Turkey.
Hello.
Hi, hello.
Cindy, good evening. Good evening to the panel. You know, this is a very, very big tragedy. There's two families and their families affected in this disastrous thing. What I do not understand, and the previous callers has pointed it out, why in the first place was this court case ever been broadcast by the media? That's where it started. And what's happening now, people has got no respect for other people's feeling. It's like a sore wound that's opening all the time, and it's going on and on. I don't know ever how these families will get to rest or would get peace ever in this tragedy that happened. And I can just say, however these people were allowed to do this, it's just going beyond any person's mind. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Turkey, thank you so much. You know, the fact that we've lost the compassion, as we were saying, but I want to pick up on what Soli is saying, that these are topical issues that people want to ventilate and explore different angles as to what could have or may not have been covered, that may not have been covered during the trial, and let alone the fact that this is a high-profile person who was lauded the world over, fallen from grace, and here we sit with a, you know, a newsworthy production. I'll come back to you very briefly. Advocate Memani, just your response to some of our callers in the fact that it's already public knowledge. It's been on other platforms, Crime and Investigation for one, and a book published on the matter, that it may not even hold legal master for the families to go to court.
Yeah, no, I think I just want to respond to one of the callers that, this is not America. This is South Africa. In South Africa, we've got our own culture, first of all, and then we've got our own laws in South Africa, secondly. And thirdly, there's this slogan that I like of the people living with disabilities, that nothing about us without us. Like saying on this particular matter, you can't just do a live film about people without them having considered into that. And thirdly, this matter, is still very, very, very soon for anybody or any production company to just think that they can just make a film. It is still very soon. I think also the Pistorius family, I don't think they are ready for that, as well as the Steenkamp family. And I think I want to agree with one of the callers saying that is a white monopoly capital, because you see, people are just taking an advantage of us in South Africa. You see the way we are being treated even international. People, they just do as they want in this country. But unfortunately, we've got our own culture, we've got our own rules, and we are not going to shut up as the citizens of this country. We'll stand up and say no to something that is wrong.
Advocate Memani, we're going to have to leave it there. That's Advocate Nomazotjo Memani, an advocate and ANC Women's League member. Very briefly, gentlemen, and just in response of the fact that it's already in production, the information has been public, and the right to creative license, if you will. You may not necessarily depict the story chronologically as it was, but legally, how strong is the case of the affected families?
There's no consent that has been given. That's the worrying part. Secondly, you just have to find out, excuse me, from the Film and Publication Board, what are they saying about the movie itself. What worries us is that there's also an appeal process going forward. And that also can play in the hands of both the prosecution or the defense, that certain elements of the case was not even looked at. So it's in the public domain. Yes, we understand that we need to talk about gender-based violence, and it's in our endeavor as a commission to talk about it. But there's a time and space for everything, and the time is not now.
All right, we're going to leave it there, gentlemen. Thanks indeed, as always. I do appreciate 10 seconds. Like, just keep on.
No, I just wanted to say, you see, if you talk about a true life story, you have to give a true narrative. Now, what we hear, it appears that these guys have just gone and take their own narrative. And that's the problem, because you're not giving a true narrative of what the people could have consented to.
Okay.
You just have your own
We'll have to
views.
continue that debate on social media and at another time. But indeed, our condolences to the Steenkamp family. To relive all of this over and over again, it must be the most painful experience. And thanks to you at home for calling in as well. We'll take a quick ad break and we'll see you on the other side.